Hi folks. So I felt compelled to revisit this topic. One reason was I recently tripped across the video that prompted the name, and it was an old Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, from the original Not Ready for Primetime Players and with Steve Martin. And it was Theodoric, medieval barber. And everybody that came into his shop got a bloodletting, no matter what their symptoms were. Broken leg? You need a bloodletting. But I'm bleeding already. I'm the barber. So that's where the title came from. And the other reason I wanted to revisit this was because even though I made it clear there are times when a full recap is warranted, some people either didn't hear that or chose not to hear it and commented how wrong I was about everything. Now, everything I offer here is my personal opinion backed by my years of experience. It's nothing more than that. I'm not going to tell you that my opinion is the end-all be-all. It's not. It's just one man's opinion backed by many years of experience. So the times that a full recap are warranted are, for instance, if you have an old piece of tube equipment from the 50s or 60s, don't even fire it up before you at least test the capacitors or ideally replace them, because they are exposed to just horrendously high voltages. The capacitors are old, they weren't that great to start with, and they're probably leaky, and you run the risk of damaging your power transformer or your rectifier tube. So that's one case. There's certain eras of NAD equipment. I had a 1300 preamp that every capacitor in there, with the exception of 4 in the phono preamp that were Rubicons, everyone was measurably terrible. But here's the interesting part about that. Even though they're all measurably bad, the thing still worked. And that brings me up to the other reason I wanted to revisit this topic. And that is my pet peeve here. And it is recapping is not repair. And it's not a viable repair. What occurred to me is I just posted my 120th video. And I looked back through all my videos to see how many would have been cured by a recap. And there were maybe 3 or 4. Now, some of these pieces of equipment had more than one video associated with them. I have some videos up there that were not about repair. So let's just round that down to 100 pieces of equipment. 3 or 4 would have been repaired with a total recap. That's a success rate of 3 or 4%, which honestly I don't consider to be a success rate at all. 3 or 4% just doesn't make sense. And I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. Listen, I wasn't born knowing how to do all this stuff. I had to learn all of this. Some lessons I learned the hard way. Point being, you look on the internet, you see capacitors fail. There's a lot of other things that fail too. You need to take each symptom and let the symptom be your guide. This is like a mantra with me. You need to say, okay, well, what's this thing doing or not doing? If it's not powering up, it could be blowing fuse. It could be a reason the fuse blew too. So these are things you need to consider. The other problem is, and I mentioned this in the previous video, was that if you recap something and you really don't have the experience to know what happened, you may introduce a new problem. And that happens, sadly, far more often than you think. Bad soldering. And remember, this stuff is old, and the traces are thin, and the glue that holds the copper to the boards is dried out. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I've had things go wrong when I've replaced capacitors for people who wanted things recapped, but I have the experience to be able to find the problem. And sometimes it takes a little while. That's why you always do a little area and test it. But I just wanted to revisit that and just reiterate the point that recapping is not a good repair scheme, idea, technique. Really, you need to understand what's going on and troubleshoot it in order not to just throw parts at something. I mean, I've done it with cars. I had an old Camaro that would just randomly die, and I replaced every part in that distributor. I replaced the high energy ignition module, I replaced the coil, I replaced the cap, I replaced all kinds of stuff. And it wasn't until I went to the junkyard to buy a junk distributor, I looked down in there and I go, what's this thing? And the guy tells me, oh, that's the pickup coil. That was the problem. So I replaced all that other stuff. All those parts were good, but if I had known what I was doing, probably would have saved myself some time and money and not been stuck on the side of the road as many times as I was. So anyway, I just wanted to revisit this topic and talk about that. And that's it. So I'm going to put this to bed unless something else comes to mind. Anyway, I'm also going to link that Saturday Night Live video in the description. It's pretty funny. Check it out. And thank you for watching. And as always, I like giving back to the community. That's given me so much. Thanks a lot, everyone.